Boy, I usually only get this excited when they say the title of a game in the game. There it is! There it is!
I'm gonna be real with you. Biomorph was not on my radar. Like, at all. I thought the character design for Harlow was weak. I'm still not a fan of it. And I didn't really like the game's overall presentation. My first impression of the game, I thought its animation was generic, like from some old Saturday morning cartoon or something. Why does Pepper Ann and Rocket Power come to mind? Anyway, it's suffice to say, I didn't really follow the game. That's not saying much, really. My mission is to play every Metroidvania ever. So it's not uncommon for me to ignore upcoming MVs because, quite frankly, I'm gonna play them anyway. Why not go in as blind as possible for maximum enjoyment? Well, let me tell you, dear listener/viewer, going into Biomorph with zero knowledge was a blessing because this game blew me out of the water. I'm not gonna bury the lead. Biomorph is good. Really good. And if that's all you came here to hear, then there you go. Cue the outro. For everyone else interested in hearing my long-winded analysis, first off, hey, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you. And second, let's set the scene. You play as Harlow, an armless, kinda Lilo and Stitch looking thing, whose arms have been replaced with, I don't know, AI robot heads. God, this character design is really lame. Harlow awakens with amnesia in a lab or something. Nobody really knows where they are at first. And I say they, referring to Harlow and his two AI arms, Innie and Longface. All three have a significant amount of dialogue, so expect to be hearing from your arms a lot, whether you want to or not. Anyway, the place is falling apart, so Harlow and the gang have to find a way out while also trying to save another creature. Harlow prioritizes the former over the latter, and the game starts proper with the gang getting fished out of a lake. What follows is a tale about a lone creature trying to do some good in a world devastated by a catastrophic event. Also, there might be some environmentalist undertones scattered here and there for more discerning players. You gotta pay attention though, it's real subtle. Alright, you already know I think Biomorph's good, but why do I think it's good? Let's find out. Like always, we'll start with the game's combat. In Biomorph, combat's super fun and buttery smooth. Harlow feels exceptionally responsive, starts with a sweet slide/dodge move, and has so many combat options at his disposal. I'm talking guns, grenades, rocket launchers, so much punching, and whatever this huge cannon is. Rest assured, there are lots of options for you to kill things. These options come in two main categories, chips and biomorphs. And before we move forward with combat, I just want to pat myself on the back because for the first time in a long time, I won't be referring to Hollow Knight. At least, not exclusively. Don't worry, the Hollow Knight comparisons are coming. I've read the script. In actuality, if I had to choose a game Biomorph takes combat inspiration from the most, I'd say Biomorph is most inspired by Ender Lilies' Quietus of the Nights. If you've played Ender Lilies, you know what I mean when I say Biomorph's chips are like Ender Lilies' spirits. And if none of that makes sense to you, turn off this video right now and go play Ender Lilies, you uncultured swine. Like Ender Lilies, Biomorph gives Harlow 3 buttons dedicated to attacks. You assign a chip to a button, and pressing that button uses that chip's move, be it an attack or something like creating a force field. Some chips come with charges or a limited number of uses that recharge at save points, just like the spirits in Ender Lilies. Though there are some chips with infinite uses, such as punching. This game will not limit you on punching, that's for sure. The other means of combat besides chips is biomorphs, and this is the game's real gimmick. There are a bunch of enemies that, when defeated, give Harlow the option to biomorph them? I don't know if I'm using that word right. Basically, you stand over an enemy's mutilated corpse and morph into him. It's like Kirby, but with less sucking and more viscera and gore. Once you morph into a defeated enemy, you acquire everything that comes along with them as long as you stay on that screen. Movement speed, movement options, attacks, everything. It's freaking great and adds a ton of meaningful variety to the game that I'll dive deeper into once we hit the abilities and platforming and progression sections. But initially, biomorphing is used for short-term puzzle solving before eventually evolving into something greater. The bosses in Biomorph are pretty good, I'd say. I saw some user reviews stating the game's too easy, but I don't agree with that. I'm not saying it's highly difficult, but I think there's a fair challenge to be had. There was one particular boss that was giving me so much trouble that I actually stopped to think about my build before I re-challenged him, which is rare because I'm pretty stubborn. If I find a setup I like, I'm gonna probably use it the entire game, regardless if I'm screwing myself over or not. Turns out, there's a specific biomorph that is this boss's kryptonite and turned a pretty frustrating encounter into a walk in the park. I love bosses that have an easy mode if you're clever enough to find it. It's very Mega Man. But yeah, I liked the bosses. They were challenging yet fair, came with an easy button for more thoughtful players, and their designs were kinda cool. There are also a bunch of arena battles you can get locked into that give you rewards upon completing them. These were also great fun and were implemented very well. Most games that use locked arenas either use them too much or use them as skill checks to impede player progress. Biomorph struck a nice balance between using arenas as skill checks versus reserving them for off-the-beaten-path obstacles, which made stumbling upon them and gaining the rewards that much more rewarding. Overall, I liked Biomorph's combat a lot. Not just for Harlow's responsiveness and the overwhelming amount of moves at his disposal, but because he could pogo like Hollow Knight. Told you there were Hollow Knight references.
Abilities, platforming.
As stated earlier, Harlow feels great to control, which in turn makes platforming feel great to do. I can't talk about every cool platforming bit or even every ability Harlow obtains for spoiler reasons, so I'll just touch on some of the more early and obvious stuff. For abilities, Harlow starts with a slide that gets him into tight spaces, and then eventually gets a Mega Man X-style wall jump and a multi-directional air dash. He also gets some more situational things like swimming. All in all, nothing too thrilling here. Where things get interesting are with the biomorphs. When Harlow turns into an enemy, there's a chance that enemy may have a traversal option Harlow can use. An early biomorph traversal skill lets Harlow cross over hazardous spikes unharmed, while another lets him spit out a ball so he can hit out-of-reach switches. Each biome has a couple specific enemies to biomorph into, and as you can imagine, these enemies' skills will be needed to progress and platform throughout the biomes you get them in, and sometimes beyond. This adds so many opportunities for clever level design that the devs thankfully took advantage of. The biomorph mechanic provides a lot of platforming variety and leads to a lot of fun sequences. My favorite being the old lady ghost biomorph whose scream shifts things in and out of our plane of existence. Yeah, this game gets unapologetically weird. To put it simply, biomorphing is very cool, is implemented very well, and adds so much to the experience. For combat, for platforming, and for traversal and progress gating.
Progression.
When it comes to Harlow's progression, there's a lot on offer in terms of player expression, starting with loadouts. At save points, called safes or safeties, you can change up Harlow's equipment. There's no gear like swords and armor, nor does Harlow have stats like traditional RPGs. Instead, you'll be swapping out chips, biomorphs, and mementos. We talked about chips already. These are your attacks and actions you can assign to 3 different buttons. This is the first time I'm bringing up mementos though, but they're easily explained in 3 words. Hollow Knight Charms, or Paper Mario Badges, or Ender Lily's Relics. Whichever game you want to use for reference, you probably get the point. Mementos are accessories you can equip that do special things, such as currency magnetism, extra damage against bosses, or a boost in your HP. Each memento has a value from 1 to 5, and this value represents how many memento sockets are needed to equip it. You have 10 sockets, you can equip any number of mementos that add up to 10 or less. There's another value over here that represents the memento's level. Chips also have levels. Aside from finding mementos and chips while exploring, they can also be bought and leveled up at shops with a currency called plaques that are found in chests or dropped from defeated enemies. Upgrading also requires other materials found while exploring, such as logic blocks and raw materials, so money can only get you so far. Anyway, shops are found all over the game world, but if you want to upgrade your chips and mementos, you can only do that in the game's hub town called Blightmoor. Blightmoor offers way more than just shops though. There are NPCs galore, and where there's NPCs, there be side quests. Your apartment for holding all your craps here too, and so's this crazy cat lady. There's lots to do here, especially once you start upgrading buildings with the blueprints you find or buy or earn through side quests. It's always fun to watch your little town grow, but when it comes to growth and progression, I've saved the best for last. Biomorphs. Just like chips, you can equip biomorphs to 3 different buttons. And to transform, all you have to do is hold down a button to switch your chips display to your biomorphs display. Press the button of the biomorph you want and poof, you've biomorphed. This is so stupid. Attentive listeners may be asking themselves, wait a minute, I thought transformations only lasted for 1 screen. Good ears, intrepid listeners. Yes, anytime you leave a screen, you will unbiomorph. However, if you absorb a certain amount of the same creature, you can then equip and biomorph into that creature whenever you want. And if you absorb a certain excess amount of that same creature, you can level up that form. The caveat for leveling up a form is that you can't farm the same enemy in the same spot. You have to actually find a new version of that enemy somewhere else and absorb them. And if you can't remember if you've absorbed a particular enemy or not, the game has your back. If you've already absorbed an enemy, it'll have red electricity crackling out of it to let you know you've already absorbed it. I'm telling you, these devs thought of everything. So yeah, the biomorph mechanic is absolutely awesome. I mean, it better be. The game's freaking named after it. It's always a thrill entering a new biome and finding your next form and discovering how you're going to use your new form to progress and fight. And it's really hard for the game to get stale when you're constantly changing everything about yourself.
Exploration.
Man, not only does Biomorph do combat, abilities, platforming, and progression right, but it had to kill it in exploration too, didn't it? The game's world's huge, with a lot of diverse and intriguing biomes you'll want to explore. It's got one of those maps that extends and branches out rather than stays compact, so don't expect interesting interconnectivity or mind-blowing shortcuts. What you can expect is fast travel, because if this game didn't have fast travel of some sort, that'd be the end of this video, baby! The world's just too spread out to not have fast travel, so I'm eternally grateful Biomorph has it. But I just wish it had implemented it not so stupidly with its safe kit system. Basically, every save point has the potential to be a fast travel point, but only after you find the save point and use one of these save kits to transform it to a fast travel point. For the great majority of the game, this wasn't an issue because I had plenty of save kits. But by the end game, I was out of these stupid kits and had no idea where to find more. Thankfully, the game has you covered with a late game NPC who gives you hints on blueprint locations, but it was still obnoxious not having the kits when I entered the final biome. Not having a kit forced me to backtrack through 2 biomes just so I could get to a fast travel point. I don't know, the kits was just a stupid idea in my opinion. There were so many quality of life things Biomorph lifted from Ender Lilies, why not also do what Ender Lilies did and make fast travel completely free and accessible out the gate? Speaking of lifting quality of life things from Ender Lilies, thank you Biomorph for acknowledging how great and convenient these tiny implementations can be. Fast travel from any and all save points, returning to your last save point via an option on the pause menu, the golden border on the map indicating everything in that area has been collected and completed. You can tell the devs knew what MV fans wanted. Heck, Biomorph even lets you pin screenshots on your map, just like in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. The amount of respect Biomorph has for players' time is unprecedented. Yeah, there are some slight boss run backs here and there, and a corpse run system that's pointless and stupid and just needs to die. Seriously, stop putting these in our Metroidvanias already. But I can easily forgive these transgressions. What can I say? I love a map that tells me where every possible exit is in any given area. It's a beautiful thing. Look at that. I'm minutes into the exploration section and have only talked about the map, which is amazing if you haven't gathered. How is the game's actual exploration? In a word, phenomenal. No joke, no exaggeration. It's just dang good. And there are 2 reasons why it's dang good. 1, there's lots to find, discover, and collect. And 2, it is so very, very open. Let's begin with the game's openness. It starts out linear, asking players to follow a structured path through a couple of biomes until they reach an ancient library, which is like the first 4 hours or so of the game. But once you complete that, the final 75% of this 18 to 20 hour game is unstructured, with an exception or 2. You're given objectives on the map, but how and when you approach them is up to you. I did everything I could before even touching one of these objectives, because that's just the kind of gamer I am. And playing like this seriously didn't advance the plot for like 10 hours because I was just exploring and opening up new biomes and finding stuff. I'd get to the room right outside of the objective and then leave and explore another portion of the map. It was so incredible how open this world truly was. The game's final biome, if you can even call it that, can only be opened if you do a specific objective. But if you do that objective first, you can go to the final biome whenever, which wouldn't necessarily make it the final biome if you haven't done the other objectives. Now would it? Seriously, my mind's still racing with all the possible ways of approaching this world with all the knowledge I have now. Honestly, if I didn't want to get the Turbo Kid to get an analysis up, I'd definitely pop Biomorph back in and give it another playthrough. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the sign of a great Metroidvania. Immediately playing it again right after you beat it. Hey, here's my audience participation question of the day. What MV did you beat and then immediately play through again? Go ahead and leave it in the comments for me. I'll give you an unexpected one from me. Redo. I genuinely loved that game. It has a solid atmosphere. Okay, on to the second reason exploration was so dang good. Lots to find, discover, and collect. It's kind of self-explanatory, but yeah, there's lots to find, and finding hidden stuff is cool. Anytime the improvement of your character is directly linked to how well you explore makes for a good time. And the more things to find and improve, the better. There are chips, mementos, upgrade materials to make those chips and mementos better, lore items, NPCs with side quests, health and attack upgrades, this guy with the instruments, and lots of secrets, including secret items to get you a true ending. And you know how much I love true endings in my Metroidvanias. I freaking love them! I love them so much! And here's a bonus reason why exploration in Biomorph is so great. The biomes are fantastic. Each looks great, each has a distinct gimmick that constantly keeps things refreshing, and each is a ton of fun to explore. But that's not all. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I'm fairly certain Biomorph has one of the best biomes I've ever played in a Metroidvania. It is equal parts awe-inspiring and fun to navigate. The entire place captured my imagination and just kept me hooked. Not only is this biome intriguing, but it requires you to do something in 2 other biomes in order to recontextualize it so you can revisit and explore it further to find a new biome. It's just so good. Obviously, I'm being vague to avoid spoilers, so expect me to gush about it in the spoiler section. And there you go. Exploration in Biomorph is incredible. The biomes, the map, the quality of life implementations, so much to find, so many secrets. This game pretty much has it all in terms of exploration. MV fans are gonna love the places Biomorph takes them. But, unfortunately, it's high time we talk about this game's glaring weakness.
Atmosphere. Narrative.
I know I just introduced this part as Biomorph's weakness, but it doesn't mean it's bad. Atmosphere and narrative just aren't the game's strongest features. The game's atmosphere is actually fine, enemy designs look great, the biomes look amazing, the animation and presentation are high quality stuff, and the music ranges from serviceable to alright by my books. My only complaint with the atmosphere would be that I'm not the biggest fan of the character designs and portraits, and I especially don't like Harlow's design. But those are personal tastes, so don't take them too seriously. The narrative, on the other hand, I found to be okay most of the time, but at other times, dull or obnoxious. Usually I'd blame the dullness on the pacing, but I intentionally saved completing objectives until very late into the game, so that's on me. Pacing for games with a lot of openness is always tough to nail down, but for the most part, I think Biomorph did a great job at telling its story through its environments. And each biome had its own micro story to tell, like the Badlands with the bandit family and the gloomy burrows with its cult. So I wasn't not entertained by the overarching narrative and the shorter tales within. I guess I was just more annoyed at the dialogue in general. There were times when characters knew each other's names without even having introduced themselves, and that was always off-putting. And the AI heads as comic reliefs just didn't land for me. The conceit was that one was proper and the other was kind of a dummy. And then there was Harlow, who was basically always asking what he could do to help people, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense considering the urgency he should have in saving his friend from the core, but whatever. Again, the atmosphere and narrative weren't bad, they were just the game's weakest links. But that's okay, because Biomorph pretty much nailed everything else. Okay, this is your spoiler warning. Go to this timestamp to fast travel to my final thoughts.
Spoilers.
Welcome to the spoiler section, where every obscure thing is brought up and the format don't matter. The biome I was gushing about earlier, it's called the Forbidden Plains, and it really is as awesome as I said it was. It's this beautiful open field with gigantic robots called Sentinels stomping about and flying around. It's so cool when you see it for the first time, and it's even cooler to navigate. You eventually discover there's an animal you can biomorph into that's shielded from sentinel detection, so you can run around without fear of the sentinels hitting you with an orbital strike. But there's an area you just can't get to on your first visit, several in fact, so you're forced to leave, and then there's this intricate underground network you'll need to utilize to get past the sentinels. And the whole experience is capstoned with a safe haven housing an enormous window that allows you to look out onto the plains and see the sentinels in all their mechanized glory. It is such a great sequence. And it doesn't end there. If you go to this, I guess, ghost village, you can find a key that lets you enter a factory in another area of the map where the sentinels were made. Take this place down, return to the Forbidden Plains, and the sentinels will no longer attack you, nor will they have their electric shields to stop you from climbing on them. This is the recontextualization I was talking about earlier. With the sentinels docile and able to be climbed on, you can now go to the areas you couldn't get to on your first visit by climbing on the flying sentinels. It's another really awesome sequence. I really hope you're listening to the spoiler section because you've already played through the game, because you really need to go into the Forbidden Plain blind in order to get its full effect. I'd hate to have stolen that away from you. It's such an awesome part of the game. The only other spoiler I want to talk about is the path to the true ending and the endings themselves. First off, there are 3 endings total, with 2 being available without needing to do anything special. One ending has you defeat the core and stop the world drilling for ferrix, this game's proxy for oil, thus leaving the people in a primitive state. And the other ending has you take the core's place and continue drilling for ferrix, even though it's killing the planet and creating monsters. This ending has you betraying the friend you've been trying to rescue the entire time and adds a second phase to the final fight. Both endings are fine and believable, but thankfully there's also a secret true ending you can get. The path to this true ending is very much like Ender Lilies. I'm going to spoil a little of Ender Lilies now, so skip to here to skip that. So in Ender Lilies, you get an ability that unlocks magical doors. And behind these doors are slabs you need to power up the Aegis Curio. Power up the Curio, equip it for the final fight, and you've got yourself a new ending. Listen, I warned you that Biomorph took a lot of its cues from Ender Lilies, didn't I? Anyway, in Biomorph, you're not given the final ability to unlock doors. You have to find it under Blightmoor. It's not hard to find, but it is a fun reward that drove me to complete the objectives on the map, so of course I loved it and thought it was a great reward. So you get the ability that opens the doors, which in this case is go through purple stuff, in order to get the slabs, which in this game is called Biomorph Epitaphs. Once you have all 9 epitaphs, you then go to the huge scanner door that's been teasing you for forever and let it scan you. You go inside, and instead of recharging the Aegis Curio, Harlow and his AI head hands instead take a dip in a hot spring. It's actually super underwhelming and kind of disappointing, but you do get a vital container to heal yourself more, so it's not all bad. I don't know, maybe there's something in the lore that might explain why this hot spring is so important and why the Sentinels wanted to destroy it so badly. If you know something I don't, let me know in the comments. So for the people who skipped, here's where we're at. Harlow gets a skill that lets him go through these purple things. He has to find 9 epitaphs scattered throughout the world, take these 9 MacGuffin thingies to this scanner door, open the door, and then go inside and sit in a hot spring. Anyway, you take that dip in the hot springs, the AI heads say something stupid about being able to confront their inner demons or something, and then you go to the final boss and get a third option. Picking this new option leads to a new second phase, which is always awesome, and defeating him gives you the best ending and a Marvel movie post-credit scene teasing a sequel. Which they totally should make, by the way. And that's how to get the true ending. The path to getting there is super fun, the extra boss phase is great, and the actual ending is good, basically being a combination of the other endings. I just didn't like the reward for finally unlocking that door that scans you. Again, I could just be missing something. You all let me know.
Conclusion.
Biomorph's a fantastic Metroidvania. There's no debating that. Its combat is great, with lots of variety for player expression. Harlow controls exceptionally well, and the exploration is so good. Plus, there's a lot of creativity in this world, and this world just looks really nice. The game has its hiccups, of course, with pointless corpse running and the equally as pointless save kits needed to turn save points into fast travel points. But those are minor issues when you look at Biomorph as a whole. And Holistically, Biomorph is the Metroidvania total package. A Metroidvania fan's Metroidvania, if you will. It's confident in its design and thus isn't afraid to let you run rampant in its world. And its quality of life implementations show that the devs really care about what MV fans want. If you want 100% Biomorph, you have the means and in-game tools to do so, and I love it. Should you play Biomorph? I think it's pretty obvious that you should. Whether you're an MV vet or an MV noob, there's just so much to enjoy here. If you don't have Biomorph at the top of your priority list, you should fix that immediately. As its namesake implies, Biomorph has taken the DNA from the excellent Metroidvanias that have come before it and created something spectacular. Give it a shot as soon as you can. You will not be disappointed.